I think that like the idea that it's not a revenge story is hard to make just because the physical actions are contradicting the initial premise that Kara argued for.
I don't think it's a revenge story, which is why I think the end is probably one of...
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of A Lost Plot, the podcast by storytellers for storytellers, so that we can tell better stories ourselves. As always, I'm your host, Maverick, and today we have back with us our co-host, Andrew, to review the latest release from the DCU. We're talking about Supergirl, the 2026 American superhero film, which was written by Anna Nogueira and directed by Craig Gillespie. So, Andrew, as always, what is your initial impressions and rating for this film?
I think this film has the exact opposite problem that its technical predecessor, the Superman movie, as of last year, had. And I kind of struggled with what I was wanting to give this film in specific areas and what I thought was worth it. So, gut reactions after leaving the theater, I probably put this at like a 4.5. After thinking about it more, I'm not sure if I would bump or raise it by about a point, to be honest. So, the podcast will have to determine that. But I went with my gut and filled out the questionnaire immediately after, so I got my initial thoughts and feelings on the movie down, and I figured we'll sort the rest out on the pod. So,
okay, so feeling a little controversial about it. That's unusual for Andrew to not have a out of the gate just flat in your face opinion on something. That's crazy. I know for myself, I think that I walked out feeling a little disappointed, and then as I thought about it, I think that maybe there is some merit to this film. No, actually I don't. I don't think I can in all seriousness try to take a positive spin on this. I actually really hated this film. I think that there is a lot of really I think there was a lot of elements in place, but they weren't developed. I mean, and we always talk about that. Like, okay, Maverick, what's new here? I think that we're seeing, especially having gone through these later Indiana Jones content and seeing, for example, Indiana Jones 4 and seeing the problems there and how there's lack of motives and those kinds of things. I think that we've discussed how there's potential in a lot of these films, but that potential wasn't capitalized on. And I think that's definitely the case for this in a lot of similar ways to what we had expected from some of the recent reviews. So this one did contrast with Superman, which was interesting, but I don't think that it contrasted in a way that was good. So let's get into that. But my review was a 1.6, so not a fan. I was honestly disappointed to the degree that I wish I hadn't spent any money on this one. So yeah, not even for the review. I feel like it was a waste of time. Anyways, we'll get into it as we always do. But before we do, Andrew, you want to give everyone a summary of what Supergirl is all about?
Yeah, the Supergirl film starts out with, Supergirl, oddly enough. And we see her out drinking her life away across bars, pubs, nightclubs, and all things of the degenerate sort. We are very quickly given the impression that she was on Earth, but had left, and it is her birthday, I think her 23rd birthday. So she's out there living the high life, or so she would like people to believe. She's with her dog. We get a little glimpse of a family that gets murdered and a child that survives. Said child goes to find Supergirl and says, "Please help me exact revenge on my family." Supergirl doesn't want to until her dog gets pulled into it, and then she decides, okay, now it's worth it. And that sets her on a course of vengeance slash finding an antidote for her dog, and that's the movie.
Nice. Cool. So let's start it off, as we always do, with this idea of the main character. She gets introduced early on as an alcoholic 23-year-old woman who comes obviously from the planet of Krypton. They don't try to hide that from the start. And she is stuck in a stupor. Well, not even really in a stupor. She's just mildly inebriated as this girl comes in, Ruthye, who we had just seen in the very opening clip, her entire family getting murdered by this guy named Krem. What are your thoughts on the introduction of Kara Zor-El, aka Supergirl?
So are we just jumping into main character right off the bat? I think the main character is the one part of this film that makes me go, is there some redeeming quality here that merits some value? As the film progresses, I think it becomes a harder case to make. But from the outset, I like the premise of her character. And the reason I contrasted it, and I said it has the opposite problem as Superman, I guess I'll make the point now because we're talking about main character. I think the Superman film had a very weak protagonist. I think Superman does not get any sort of functional challenge to him or change throughout the film. It's like, oh, he had kryptonite poisoning, but he doesn't anymore. Kara actually has a struggle to work through from the outset, where she is a deeply flawed character. How that terminates, I'm sure we'll get to that. But as the foundation and building blocks for a character go, as far as Kara goes, I think they were pretty solid.
And by saying that they're solid, what are you pointing to specifically? That she's an alcoholic, or what specifically are you looking at here?
Well, there's more to than just she's an alcoholic. It's like she feels like she has nowhere to go. She's all alone, and she's got this dog, and she's got her cousin. I guess we can get into this now. I did, for the most of the movie, I had assumed we had the basic backstory for Supergirl, which is that she is sent along with Kal-El to protect him. But she gets stuck on the journey, on the trip, and so she is like lost in space, frozen in time for like 20 years. And so when she gets there, she left Krypton 14 years older than Kal-El. She gets to Earth, she's the same age now, he's an adult. I went into this film assuming that, and as the film progresses, I assume the same thing, that she shows up. And in my mind, that made her character stronger, because not only does she not have her family anymore and they're all dead, her mission, the reason she's sent away, is a failure because she wasn't even there to do it. Like, now her cousin is bigger and stronger than her, and what help could he possibly need from her?
Interesting.
So I went into that, and for the majority of the film, like I said, I assumed that was feeding into her character. And then we get the backstory, which I think was a much worse option, which kind of undid that for me. So
interesting. Yeah, see, so not being a fan of the DCU or like really knowing comics like you do, I didn't have any backstory to assume into who Supergirl was in the past, right? So everything that I had was literally just taking from this. I actually know nothing of Supergirl before this film, right? I have far more backstory to go with any other number of, core DCU characters, whether that's Batman or Superman or, any number of those ones. I at least had some semblance of knowing what the story is, even if I don't read the comics in the same way that you do. This one I had like no reference other than I know that she has powers basically like Superman. And so that was what I came in expecting. And so this opening bit with Kara or whatever you want to say her name is, that shows up in this scene, all that I get is she's an alcoholic and she has a dog and she doesn't give a crap about anyone else. And so I got like some level of this journey of not necessarily feeling like she belonged anywhere, but I don't necessarily get an idea of why or how or like any motivation in regards to who she is. I think that which leads to what is driving her to be really involved. And you get like a rerun of John Wick, more or less, for why she's involved, and that is her dog is dying. So it's not even dead, but is dying, and that's when she goes full, ape crap on the bad guys and decides I'm going to get involved and help this girl out, not because I actually care about this random girl that came up to me, but because my dog is potentially going to die. I already have an issue with this premise generally, especially because we don't have a lot of strings tied to the dog. If you want to look at John Wick, you can see some more thoughts on that, but like we'll just leave it there for starters. This is one of those few times where I feel like I can't even believe I'm saying this. John Wick did it better. Because you at least had some semblance of an argument that it was tied to his dead wife, versus in this case, it's like a dog that she found when she was a kid, but isn't necessarily sentimentally tied to anything in particular, except for maybe her parents. And even then, you don't know that until literally an hour into the film, which is the scene you were referencing, the scene where you find out her backstory about her family and all of that. That's the only time you get any semblance of understanding where she's coming from. And I think that it's so deep into the film that you spend a good portion of the time just trying to wonder why she's even doing any of these things. And yeah, I don't think there's really a motive there until you get to that point, unless you're assuming the backstory of the comics. Does that make sense?
Kind of. I in regards to the John Wick thing, I would probably disagree to a certain level, because John Wick is a movie that's just bloodshed and murder and vengeance, whereas I think for Supergirl, she doesn't care so much about killing all of these people as she does about getting the antidote. And the film does not really make it about her getting vengeance initially. Initially, it is just my dog needs his my dog needs his antidote, and so it's not so much a bloodbath as it is she's in pursuit of a specific goal. Now, granted, with John Wick, his dog just died, so there's not really an antidote he could look for. But I would disagree that John Wick did it better.
You can make the argument that it's not about revenge. I mean, that's one of the things that they talk about in this film, is that Tara is going to Ruthye and saying, you don't want to go down this path of revenge. And you get maybe a more what's the word I'm looking for? I would put them in two different categories. You have Ruthye, who's clearly like, my family's dead, I want this guy killed. I will, give someone this nice sword, whoever kills this guy. And then you have Kara, who goes, you don't want to do revenge. The revenge story isn't worth it. And proceeds to go on a mission to help this other girl get her own revenge while also getting this antidote. So it's kind of like sure, I'm helping you out doing this revenge thing, even though I don't think it's the best option. And fast forwarding to the end, spoiler alert, she gets to the very end and tells Ruthye, hey, it's not worth this revenge arc. It's not worth doing. And then Ruthye walks away. Only then for Kara to then say, this is for my dog, this is for Ruthie's family, this is for all the evil you've caused in the world, and proceeds to complete the revenge arc in killing Krem with both her actions and her words. So I think that like the idea that it's not a revenge story is hard to make, just because the physical actions are contradicting the initial premise that Kara argued for.
So I think this podcast is going to kind of bounce all over the place in terms of the film's plot line.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a revenge story, which is why I think the end is probably one of, off the top of my head, one of the worst ways a film has ended based on how it started. Because I think the end just completely undermines so much of what the story initially seems like it's trying to get at. And it just kind of like,
Yep.
it's like, all right, we had all of this great material at the beginning, but we're just going to do what we want with it at this point. Like, I am not as big of a fan of dialogue as Maverick is. Like, I like good dialogue, don't get me wrong. Even I was sitting there cringing at some of the lines towards the end of this film. I was like, what on earth is this Timu Aw script?
Yeah.
Just to be clear about my point on Supergirl, by the way, since we're everywhere at this point. I think what's her name? Millie Atlock or something. I think she does a really good job of portraying Supergirl, especially at the beginning, as this drunken, aimless individual, right? She has no purpose. She's just kind of out there doing her thing. Whether we get the goals right at the beginning or they become clearer as the film progresses, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I don't know if that was the point you were making.
No, it wasn't the point I was trying to make, but I think it could have come across as that. So that's a fair point to clarify. It's not that we need to have motive, like the full motives played out from the start, right? In fact, many times when you do that, it becomes cringe. But what I was looking for is some semblance of at least a hint why, and I think that and I think that in some ways the points that you have made only support this idea is that we don't actually know we don't get any hints of why she's an alcoholic until you see what happened to her family. And I think that that's the case because from the beginning, you were assuming the timeline of the comics and how the comics will go a certain direction. And you have no reason to believe otherwise until you get that scene where she has the parents and they go, oh, we're trying to save you 8 years down the road since Kal-El's left. So there is just nothing really there to push us forward other than to know that she's got problems, right? Not even this idea. Like, even if you had the scene where she shows up to Superman, which also that happens about like 45 minutes in, and she's in, well, actually, does that happen after this? I think it happens after this scene.
Like way after.
Yeah, like that scene would have at least done some semblance of giving this idea that she feels out of place, which I think is if you're going to make an argument for the premise of this film being compelling, I think the aimlessness argument, like she has no purpose and she doesn't know what she's doing with her life, is the best argument you can make. And you would have gotten that very early on if you showed that scene with Kal-El and with Kara Zor-El very early on. That would have given us some semblance of motive without giving us the full picture. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think we could talk about the backstory a little bit. I think I already made my main point, which is that I think for the storyline that they're going for, which is an aimless, purposelessness character, she lacks any drive to do anything with her life. She's like, why am I even here? Having her have gone to, like, left Krypton at the same time as Kal-El and then arriving to see an adult version of him. Because remember, for her, it would have been, I'm leaving everything behind. My planet's blowing up. The people I love and care about are all dying. I am the only one that can protect this innocent child that they're sending me with and they're trusting me with. And then she gets stuck in frozen in time, wakes up, and he's an adult looking down at her. And she's like, oh, well, shoot, I failed. That's insane. And so now not only has she lost everyone, this isn't someone she knows. Her cousin has grown up on Earth. He loves Earth. He's like, oh, Earth is great. She's like, you don't even know where we come from. So she even though her and Clark or Kal-El are from the same planet and they're the same species, they're like 2 universes apart in terms of their upbringing. And so she would feel completely alone. I think it would have been so easy, because they didn't do this with Superman, to just have like an opening 5-10 minute scene, kind of like they do in Man of Steel, where you just show her leaving the planet.
Yeah.
And then you just cut immediately to the bar. Like you show her leave the planet, you show her woken up, you see her look up at Kal-El, you see the language barrier, and then it just jumps forward and it just says like 3 years later or something, and she's in a bar.
Yeah. And I think that like the whole point for me on pressing on this is that she's the main character, right? And so the only things I feel like this first scene or the first opening act of this film really does is introduces us to the side character of Ruthye and to the villain of Krem. And then, I mean, they introduce us to the cast, more or less, but it's not clear directionally what they want besides a revenge story. And you get hints of this idea that there's this aimlessness, which does become more clear throughout the film, but it's not... I think there was like no grounding for specifically the main character for us. Partially intentional, because aimlessness is by definition not grounded, but ipso facto show us that, rather than just, leaving us in the dark for literally an hour into the film and then going, all right, this is what's going on. So, and this is once again maybe an argument that you are trying to make, is that like there's important pieces that are in place that would be valuable if they rearranged them or demonstrated them in different ways, but that doesn't mean like the pieces weren't there, which I think is commonly the case for a lot of films.
Yeah, I think the thing, because like I'm thinking about Disclosure Day, and I'm thinking about how do I analyze characters, right? I think there are bad characters with good elements, and there are good characters that can have bad elements. So then the question for me, and why I was struggling with the rating I give the movie, is Supergirl a good or a bad character? And I think up until a certain point in the film, I still think she's a good character. I think the character assassination for me, or at least where I went, all right, I can't even redeem it at this point, is towards the end of the film. Where I think it just does not feel natural for the character. Or maybe it's not even, sorry, maybe I should rephrase. The actions she takes sometimes feel like they fit the character, and then the dialogue doesn't. But then sometimes the dialogue fits the character and the actions don't. So like let's talk about the revenge thing. Her whole thing with freaking
Ruthye.
What's the little kid's name? Ruthye, and saying don't take revenge. That every time she said it, I was like, why is this a thing? Why do you care if she wants revenge or not? You're aimless. You're purposeless. Why has revenge suddenly become this thing you are morally opposed to? Like, what? Yeah, well, where is that coming out of?
Yeah, it was virtue signaling in the middle of the film for no clear reason. If anything, you should get the impression that Supergirl is more, even if she has some level of compass, she's more amoral than moral, which is what you get generally from more aimless people. They just go, I don't care, right? Which is what you're getting at the beginning of the film. And so the fact that she's later on, she's like, I don't care what happens to these bad guys, let's kill them. But then also don't do it out of revenge is really confusing, to put it mildly.
Yes. And then you get her killing the guy at the end, which felt natural for her character. But her whole entire speech up to that was just like, what are you doing right now?
Yeah. Well, it was because she was saying the exact opposite right before that. She was saying, don't do the revenge arc.
Even before she commits the act of revenge and kills him, the speech itself felt like a character assassination. Like another one on top of previous that had happened. It was just like, why is she of all people giving this long drawn out speech about don't allow this to weigh on you, don't like maybe if we had been given something in the backstory about how she took revenge, then that would have made sense. But we got nothing in the backstory about revenge. We got stuff in the backstory about losing your family and how much it hurts her So,
Mhm.
if anything, it would make more sense why she'd want to allow this child to take revenge on someone who had stolen her family from her.
Mhm. Yeah, and this is the other thing too, is that frankly the backstory doesn't really correspond in any meaningful way to anything that's going on in her life right now. Which is, you almost get the impression that she has this issue where she is angry at the universe, if you will, and she just doesn't really have anyone to be angry with in particular. And so it's almost as if when her dog gets poisoned, now she has a direction to throw her anger, if you will, right? She is now angry at Krem, which is a microcosm of her being angry at the universe for everything that's happened in her life. Okay, like, and I feel like I'm personally reading into it for the betterment of the film, trying to make the argument for the film that it's better than it actually is. But like, that's I think the best case scenario you make for this film being good is saying, well, she has this general vague problem with the universe because of the death of her parents, and she is now aimless because of that. Now her dog's poisoned. Now she has a reason to live, right? And then it becomes a full-on revenge arc for her, which then also completely contradicts what she's saying, which is what you were making the point of. Like, her words are contradicting her actions, where she goes, I now have an anger against the universe directed at Krem, but you can't have revenge against Krem. Why? Because I have to have revenge against Krem.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. I just I don't think it's easy to make the argument that like there is cohesiveness in this film, and a lot of it does tie to that core scene at the end where she just kills the bad guy. Like, if she didn't kill the bad guy, maybe you can make the argument that there is a cohesive arc that doesn't contradict itself.
But unfortunately, we don't get that. So,
yeah.
Outside of Supergirl, by the way, I think everything else in this movie is trash.
Dude, Krem is so bad.
Oh, we want to talk about the villain now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you give your thoughts first? Because I can tell you've been thinking about him.
Okay, so first off, there's the opening scene. The more I thought about the opening scene, the more I realized how terrible this villain was. You have to think about it because, I mean, so first off, this is totally all except for Lobo. All men are idiots in this film, and all women are the best. Krem is the prime example of this opening scene where the mom does all the talking and the mom and dad get killed anyways. The brother literally jumps out and says boo. Krem turns around, slashes the brother, who's literally standing right in front of Ruthye, and then turns away. First off, if you're killing everyone in the house, why didn't you just kill the girl you saw standing right behind the brother you just killed? 2, he's a human trafficker. Why wouldn't he just grab her and then traffic her? Like if he's actually this malicious villain, no, he's just stupid and convenient to not do the things that he would normally do for the sake of the plot. Or let's go to that scene later on where she's in jail and then she spits on him and then he goes, "You'll die before sunset." I don't know. Here's a grand idea as a villain. Okay, let's just think about this right now. Why don't you kill her right now? Why don't you kill her right now? Like, what? What is going on here? You know? So yeah, I had a lot of issues with him. He also just looks stupid. I'm sorry. I don't need a bunch of glitter on my face to show that I'm a bad guy. He didn't look like he knew what he was doing. He looked like the bad guy's sidekick from Guardians of the Galaxy. He didn't look like anything that anyone would normally be afraid of.
Face.
Yeah, literally.
Here's my thoughts, by the way. I think you get rid of Ruthye, of Ruthie's family, of the villain, of all of the villain's tanks and his goons and his minions and the trafficking side plot and all of it. You take the only redeemable quality of this film, which is Supergirl and Lobo, and you make a different movie. And then I think you get some points back.
Yeah. Well, no, here's the thing. As I was thinking about it, it's like the most compelling problems for Kara in this film don't really have to do with Krem. Most of it has to do with the planet that she's on when she almost gets lasered to smithereens by a green sun.
Mm-hmm.
That was like probably the most compelling issue she dealt with in the entire film. And even the arrows that Krem shoots at her, or the darts, or whatever you want to call them, that are shooting her, like shooting her up with kryptonite, she literally just goes doink, and then give her 2 seconds and she's good. Like,
Okay, on the kryptonite thing, by the way, I feel like this movie just cheapened how bad kryptonite is for them. It was also so inconsistent how it worked. Because it was like, oh, she's on a planet, she can't freaking move. Oh, she just got shot up with it like heroin, and she's just gonna walk it off. Yeah. Like when at least in the David Cornsweet Superman movie last year, when he was near kryptonite, he wasn't doing jack squat. Like he was out. Yeah. So out that like he wasn't just tired and weak. He was like sick. And like they kind of do that when she first gets to the planet, but for her it's like oh, she's so strong, she doesn't get sick, she just gets tired and goes to sleep. I don't know.
Yeah, well, then here's the other thing. They even apply it inconsistently on the little mini planet that she's on as a kid. Because if it's this poisonous for her and she's like a young adult, clearly healthy young adult, and then everyone else on the planet that she's on that's dying, except for her, starts getting poisoned from kryptonite, it's like, why? How did this become a thing? Why isn't the dog getting sick who's been around? Like, why is she not getting sick? But no, only her parents and the other people on the planet are getting sick, except for her. Which just, maybe you can try to make the argument that it's because she's younger. I don't know. It still feels incredibly convenient that that's just how it works.
I mean, the only thing I could think of was she was born there, so maybe she has a more natural immunity to it. But at the same time, I don't really want to defend her background in this, or backstory in this film, because I think it's stupid. I think here's the thing that blew my mind, all right? It was so unnecessary and long. They spent so much time towards the end of the film going like, oh, we survived by making this force field that allows us to have a floating rock in space. And then this floating rock is poisonous, so it's killing all of us. So we're going to have this emotional journey for you, where it could have just been, your uncle disobeyed the laws of our planet as it was going to blow up. Me, your father, believes in your uncle, and he's sending his firstborn, the first natural born child in a millennia, off in a spaceship in the hopes to continue our race. I am going to send you to try and 1, save you from the oncoming doom, and 2, so you can protect your cousin. It takes 5 minutes. You can imply all of that from lots of chaos and exploding planet scenes, and then a spaceship going away into space. And then you cut to her waking up and seeing adult Superman trying to talk to her. And then you cut to her in a bar. Boom. It's not even 10 minutes into the film, and we've got a compelling reason for her to be involved.
Yeah.
I also think we shouldn't have had... I keep forgetting her name. Honestly, she's so forgettable. Ruthye. Oh my gosh. This was what pissed me off more than anything in this film. Because I was sitting there.
But she has swords.
And I was sitting there.
And I was thinking, the best swords in the universe.
Yes, I was thinking, maybe I don't want to be sexist, but I was like, this movie does kind of feel like they're making all men idiots and all women smart. And I was thinking about it. I was like, Supergirl, I can at least see, because at least she's there. There's like some semblance of her struggling at first, and she's not the perfect character. But then that kind of gets undermined as the film plays out, like we've discussed. But then you get Ruthye, who somehow is set up, by the way. the premise of her character, she is incapable. She doesn't know how to use a sword. She doesn't know how to fight. But then something in her just wakes up after having a talk and a heart-to-heart with Lobo that makes her an absolute raid boss. How is she fighting people when she previously was completely incapable of doing so? She just decided, I'm gonna do that now. She chokes out a guard.
Yeah. No, she chokes. Yeah, okay. Her getting the guard to come in there and then choking him out was just one of those moments I couldn't even believe this was happening in a movie.
Also,
like, this is just
how
so
did she get in the vent?
Oh yeah,
it was like 6 feet in the air, and all we see is just the little and we're like,
she was
like 3 feet tall.
The Jedi jump thing. She can just jump through things.
As they say in basketball, she got the hops.
What on earth? Yeah. No, she's bad. And here's the other thing too, is like they try to tie it in some way into this human trafficking arc, which is saying, oh, this guy Krem, he's despicable, not just because he killed our family, but because he's trafficking these women, which, obviously we're not a fan of. But as a storyline premise, they don't tie us to this problem in any way other than just saying it's bad, right? And you don't even see any of the characters up close. They put them at a distance, like they're a random group of NPCs that you can watch from a distance being trafficked. And I'm like, if you're going to, when you're talking about creating a compelling story, if you're going to get us emotionally invested, show us the characters, show us why we care, show us their backstories, like we were talking about previously for the other characters in this film. Do this for these characters you want us to be invested in too, and then twist the knife, right? Now that you show us that he kills this random woman that he's captured, show us previously why we care, so that when she dies, it's more impactful for us as audiences. But they don't do that. Instead, they're just like, oh, this random group of NPCs you should care about. Oh, no, they're dying. Oh, shoot, be mad at the bad guy. It's like, all right, guys, come on. Like, this is not how you get people emotionally invested in a story, which is what this is all about.
Here's the thing that I feel where it makes me feel like this movie is very much the feminist mindset behind it, is this human trafficking subplot had no purpose whatsoever within the film. It didn't tie into Kara's story at all, because she has no reason to care other than, oh, they're girls who don't have their home. It doesn't tie into Ruthie's backstory, because guess what? What's his name? Craig just leaves her there, and she never experiences human trafficking. It doesn't tie into Lobo's story other than he has a bounty out for one of the goons.
Yeah.
Like, other than, oh, these are just disgusting pig men who want to rape, pillage, and plunder. That's all we get, which is why I'm like, we can never know the mind of a director or a writer when it comes to movies, other than when it comes to, like, actual interviews and hearing them talk about it.
Sure.
But, like, my gut reaction, like, we've been doing the podcast for a while. I've been on so many episodes. We both write. We both think about, like, we are at least, I would make the claim, we are more versed than the average individual when it comes to the thought process behind why people do what they do in story, story building. I cannot think for the life of me of another reason you would put that in there.
If that makes sense. Other than just to make a play for what? Like,
well, so like you've got this whole, like, everything in the movie is building towards this idea of, like, women empowerment very subtly. You get Ruthye, who is unrealistically overpowered by the end. You get Supergirl, who's just a girl boss by the end. Like, I don't think she actually works through her trauma, to be honest. She
not entirely sure.
She goes
Actually,
back
that's
to
pretty
Superman,
explicit.
but it's like we are. It's kind of like they're forcing her to figure things out without us actually getting a. I don't know. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe there's a bit of detour. I don't think there's a moment in the film or even a portion of the film where she truly reconciles with what happened. She just kind of goes, I'm no longer going to be a drunk anymore. I'm going to go home to my cousin now. That seems like the move.
I think the only, and this is why it's not complete crap in regards to her as the protagonist, is that you have this idea that she goes on this arc from being, I am detached from the world and don't know what's going on, and you slowly get the motive for that. We've already talked about that aspect, but then you get her to the end, especially after the poisoning of her dog and the whole issue around Ruthye and killing Krem and all of that. At the end of all of that, she's come to the conclusion through this journey that she cannot just detach herself from the world, that she needs to be involved. And that's when she goes back to Earth and sees Kal-El and goes, okay, now I'm going to stay here. That is the only part of the film that I actually was like, you know what? I kind of like how they ended it this way, solely because it leaves opportunity for growth for this character while still adding some level of completion, right? She has progressed as a character without finalizing making her be this altruistic individual. She still has stuff to work through, so hypothetically she could go over those things in the next film if they were to make another film. So I appreciated it in that way. Do I think that it still makes the film itself incredibly compelling? No, because they didn't really lay the groundwork for that arc that she went through already in a very cohesive or compelling way. But those are my thoughts on the end.
I could see your point. I think I understand we're leaving it off in this place, so we've got a starting point to work from. I just don't think the way we got to that place was very realistic.
No, I agree.
So that's what I'm getting
and that also goes back to the doubling back on itself in the themes thing, where the revenge arc just goes and inverts on itself for the sake of killing Krem.
Yeah.
And making girl bosses out of these characters.
Yes. So back to the girl boss thing. In stories, there's always the main theme, right? There's the message and the themes and what are we supposed to get out of this? But then also films have underlying assumptions that they make about the world too that influence the way that characters are portrayed. And I think with this film, it's just very feminist coded. And I think it ends up coloring a lot of the interactions and the way that characters interact in a very negative way. Because you get characters like Ruthye, who could be a decent character in theory, despite the fact that I think she should have just been gone away with. I don't think she really adds very much much value, I should say. She adds something.
She's
but it's
the inciting reason why she's involved in the plot. But
yes.
Yeah.
I don't think... Well, actually, that's a good question. Would Supergirl have gone after Craig absent Ruthye? Because really what happened was her dog got shot while she was taking him out to go pee.
True. Actually, you're right. We don't need Ruthye. Never mind. She's gone.
Because think about it. His ship blows up when Ruthie's dad blows up the ship. So Ruthye could have been trafficked and Supergirl could have just found her later. We didn't need her to go to the bar and be like, I am going on a trip in my favorite rocket ship. Who wants to come with me?
And see traffic.
So anyways.
Never mind. Let's stop.
Let's move on. That was terrible.
No
all that to say,
yeah.
Yes. All that to say, Ruthie's character is unnecessary.
Yeah.
I don't think we need her. And yet she ends up being, if we are going to use her, she shouldn't be capable. She should just be a completely helpless individual who can add more outside of just being good at fighting, right? She can be resourceful. She can be intelligent without being a girl boss in combat, right? We don't need that at all.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's so funny because we talked about this during the Superman review, where we talked about how when the struggle with Superman is they're already so powerful that you need to find other ways to draw attention and motive that is compelling outside of that character themselves if they're going to be basically invincible, right? And this film, they actually did that for Kara, Supergirl, by making her this drunkard who's got some listlessness to herself and has this problem with kryptonite, which shows up in the middle of the film. We talked about development of that, once again, but like it could have been better, but that was at least there. It's almost like they took the notes from Superman and like acted on them, which is kind of good. But then they took all of the good attributes from Superman from the last film and just put them on another character called Ruthye, who's just altruistic, except for that she wants to massacre this bad guy. So, whatever.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. It's like there's lots of examples of like using, and this is maybe going a bit back, but like drinking as a problem for a character and using it to develop a character and their issues. There's lots of good examples of this happening. I mean, we have, whether it's Arthur Shelby or Tommy Shelby from the Peaky Blinders show, great examples of how this devolves someone and how they have to work through it to become a better person. Haymitch from the Hunger Games has some development of there. Now, granted, he's a side character, so not as much. Iron Man has some issues with this in the middle of his films. You have Pirates of the Caribbean uses it as a foil to destroy Jack Sparrow from time to time. Like, there's many different ways this technique has been used to effectively develop characters in film and television. So it's like the fact that that's the compelling flaw for Kara at the beginning. I just don't buy it. But that's going back. Maybe I've detracted too much from the current discussion. But yeah, Kara and Ruthye as a whole, cohesively in the entire film, adding them together is not. It doesn't lead anywhere, and I think that goes back to the themes of revenge.
What
Anyways.
themes?
Well, yeah. Anyway, okay. We'll go around in circles. So, what do you think about the lasting impact of this film? Do you think this film has a lasting impact? Do you think it will have a lasting impact?
I know so many people liked the original Superman, or for the DCU Superman movie, the one that came out last year.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it. I think it's a terrible movie. I probably disliked it more than I disliked this movie, simply because of the fact that I think I had more hope writing on that film. Like, when we get to the Supergirl film, this film I didn't expect to be phenomenal. It's Supergirl. Nobody goes to like, oh, who do I want to see when I think about DC movies? The Flash, Batman, Superman, maybe? Wonder Woman, maybe? We've got the Teen Titans are pretty popular. You've got all the different iterations of Robin, Nightwing, Red Hood, Damian Wayne. No, we're going to make a Supergirl movie right now, guys. Like, don't get me wrong. I actually was not, I had like no opinions about the casting choice before the film. I think the casting choice was good. I think that was the only good decision they made going into this film, though.
Sure.
They
yeah, Millie Alcock's great. I mean, and I think this is another example where you can have a great actor doing their lines as well as they can, but they were given these lines, and these lines suck. Mm-hmm. So, nothing against her as an actress. It's just, this is the hand she was dealt, and the hand she was dealt was by Anna Nogueira, and Anna Nogueira caused a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what? The second day into the weekend is made $29 million off of a budget of 186. So probably won't make back its money if today is a sign of anything, but maybe it will. Maybe everyone's going to come out for Supergirl over the next day and a half. We'll see.
I think the thing that is really bothering me about these films, like we did Disclosure Day, we've done Indiana Jones 5. Granted, that was came out a while
A bit
ago
ago,
compared to
yeah, a
these
couple
two,
years ago, yeah.
and now we're doing Supergirl, and even thinking back to like Superman, like this is DC is putting their hopes and dreams into this and trying to rival the MCU. But the more and more that I watch these new films that are coming out, it feels like they're getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
Like we've been doing the like, oh, when a movie releases, we'll watch it. I hold on. Let me pull up my ratings for these films by date to see how, if they, like, I think they've actually gotten worse.
I mean, I think it's pretty objective to say that the MCU ones did. There's no doubt about that. I think that, as much as we say Disney is trash as a general statement on here, there is some things they've come out with which are legitimately good. Most of them are TV shows, so we don't review them on here. But, if you want to talk about the Mall show, which we've given some credence to, if you want to talk about Andor, which I'm a huge fan of, if you want to talk about Rogue One, they have these a few glimmering glimpses of hope in the middle of like a general malaise of despair. And so you can look at that and go, oh, crap. Why is it going on this downward trend? I think what's interesting looking at that compared to the DCU is that we looked at the DCU, especially with James Gunn taking the helm, and we go, great, we're looking for a change here. We're looking for some level of hope. And we just haven't seen that yet. We are looking at the Superman film, or now we're looking at the Supergirl film. And these films so far have only solidified a general downward trend, which was already happening in the DCU. It's not encouraging.
That's I saw an interview with Tom Holland, I think it was, recently, and he was talking about working on the Odyssey, and he was like, Christopher Nolan is the first director I've worked with who doesn't build the sets before he's done with the script.
That's crazy.
Like he's like, in working with Marvel and their films, it sounded like they're building the sets and then going, all right, we want to make this scene work. Here's how we're going to do this. Let's build the script around it.
Yeah, that's silly.
I think the other thing too is, looking at these films, there are so many things that I would look at and go, this just seems like a basic necessity to make a film work. The character needs to have a reason, a legitimate reason to be involved.
Yeah.
The character needs to have flaws. The villain should be compelling. Like these seem like a bare minimum, but it seems like even like less and less films are having the bare minimum at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Even the music in this one was terrible, by the way. Like that end fight scene, whoever chose the song for that scene, it was terrible. I was like,
yeah,
wow. Like the music in the trailer was good. I didn't hear that song once in that film.
I'd have to go back and listen, but yeah, I that's a whole other thing. That doesn't even necessarily do anything with the story other than accentuate or where we're already at. But yeah, I generally agree. It's I mean, I don't know that we're going anywhere further with this other than to say this is what we got. It was disappointing. It wasn't Millie's fault, and that's the pod. So
yeah, I think, unlike, say, with Captain Marvel, I think Millie's actually pretty decent in her role as Supergirl if they can fix her in later films. I hope this serves as a wake-up call for them, because I don't think they're just going to shut down all future DCU projects. They've already invested so much into this, and they've got their Superman movie, which was successful. I hope this movie is not, because I think they need a serious wake-up call on how are we actually going to proceed with making films. And I think James Gunn needs to realize that Guardians of the Galaxy does not work for every single superhero film, because that's what both of these films felt like, is just a weird echo of Guardians of the Galaxy in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, if you look at the villain, I literally made the Guardians of the Galaxy reference, and that
Yeah.
makes sense that that's what we got, and that's what James Gunn knows how to make, which is unfortunate. So that's if we see more of that going forward, it's just going to continue to devolve, and that's going to be really bad. So, yeah, but I think that's where we're going to leave it. So that's the pod. We hope you all enjoyed. We'll be back as we always are next week. We'll see you all then.